We're going to rock and roll. We're going to have fun. I hope you enjoyed Adele. One of the things I do in my class is I have a warm-up band, so we change the warm-up band every time. But anyway, so let me tell you what we're going to go through, and we're going to have a fast pace through this, but come up with your hard questions. If you know me, which some of you do and some of you don't, it's okay to push back. It's okay to say, you seem like a nice person, but I couldn't disagree with you more, and that's okay, because that's what a Tier 1 university is about. That's what this conversation, so don't hold back on your hard questions, and this isn't a sort of UC Berkeley and entrepreneurship at Haas is a work in progress, and so we're enormously proud of where we've come. I'll be honest about some of the struggles we've had and where we're going. So what I wanted to talk to you about is our deep historic roots, how we seeded entrepreneurship at Haas, but be honest about, for a long time, we were punching below our weight, and why was that? Why we have really taken leaps and bounds in the last decade in expanding that ecosystem in our offerings, and most of all, I'm going to exit stage left, and we're going to talk to some really impressive entrepreneurs. One is somebody who some people in this class know well, Carmen Palafox, who graduated a couple of years ago, and she is, or a year ago, I think. Anyways, she is running an incubator in LA called Make in LA. So when we think that things can't be made in the US anymore, she's proving that wrong. And so we will Skype her in. And then we will have later in the hour, we will have an undergraduate from Berkeley, Jeremy, who did his thesis on entrepreneurship and decided that there was just not enough pre-seed funding going on. And he decided to take over an old bookstore that had become yet another T-shirt shop right across and make it into an incubator called the House. And it's the coolest place. It's right across from campus, and raise a thing called the House Fund. So we'll have both of them in here in a little bit. So, and you can interrupt anytime, you can, but we'll also have for questions. So let me start with some deep historic roots. So this is the Haas Business School, and what's really special about the name is that there's probably no more iconic fashion, American fashion, than blue jeans. And it was the Haas family that came to California, and it was actually a guy in Sacramento who invented blue jeans, but it was scrappy entrepreneurs in the Haas family who started dry goods who got the rights to that. That's another story about how that happens. They got blue jeans and did that. And if you happen to be in the courtyard where we had lunch today, that was endowed by the Fisher family, and that is the Gap. So, and the brand new building was under, I think, 35 Haas graduate that just graduated and built a fortune in gaming entrepreneur and in that building. So I think that we have deep, it's in the water here, and it's now in the bricks here. But I think that if we're honest with ourselves, there's a university across the way that probably did a better job for a long time in seeding an ecosystem. And that's for a number of reasons. Sand Hill Road is for a long time where all the venture capitalists were, and they were adamant about the fact that they did not want to fund anything that was longer than a 15-minute drive. So they didn't want to go to India, because of course there were no entrepreneurs in India. There were no entrepreneurs in China, and they sure as hell weren't going to drive across the bridge and go to the East Bay. So despite the fact that this has always been one of the one or two universities in the world, they weren't going to fund anything out of Berkeley. Well, shame on them, but it made for the ecosystem to be difficult here for people. And despite that, Eric Brewer, who was a professor in computer science, developed Inktomi, which was the thing that powered the first search engine that Yahoo built, and so there were all sorts of things that came out of here, but it was sort of by hook or crook, and but we didn't really have that connection to the peninsula. And because as an entrepreneur myself, I've started 4 companies. I know that capital is necessary but not sufficient. And so what we needed was a robust ecosystem, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But we haven't done so bad. So when they looked at, most recently, what are the top 50 universities producing VC-backed entrepreneurs, I'm happy to note that Cal Berkeley is now number 2, only to Stanford. So, and we believe that and a lot of us want to see that gets flipped around. So, so we are in spitting distance now. So, so we think that while perhaps we were slow and we seeded it, and John Freeman, who was my entrepreneurship professor, and Jerry Engels started the Lester Center, and Howard Lester was the CEO of Williams-Sonoma and built Williams-Sonoma and Pottery Barns. We have lots of entrepreneurs around this place that enabled this place to grow. You know, we can hold our heads high right now for being amazing in venture. But what I think is also very interesting is not only are we the second top university in venture-backed businesses, we are also, when somebody took the 161 million records in the LinkedIn database and said, who has founder in their job title, where there's a company that has 10 or more employees, University of California, Berkeley is number 5. So we are now, I would say, punching at least our weight, if not above our weight, in both number of companies and in venture-backed businesses. So we have largely solved this, since we are all type A's and we don't settle for anything. You know, that's fine, but, you know, I went to UCLA as an undergraduate, and the last year of John Wooden coaching, and we won 10 out of 12 NCAA championships. So, you know, 5 doesn't really cut it in my mind, and 2 doesn't really cut it either. So, so onward and upward. But I think that, so let me do a flyover of sort of where we are right now. And then we're going to call Carmen in a couple minutes. Yeah, Richard.
So in the spirit of pushing back a little bit, one thing I'd found really interesting with that table, and I'd seen it before, was the distribution of where those entrepreneurs actually came from within the school. And I think like one of the assets I've seen with Cal is that, you know, you've got engineering, you've got the science department, which have their own little ecosystems going on. And I've had in the back of my mind, is there a gap there for Haas to step up more in the same way that GSB does across the Bay? Yes. I wondered if you had thoughts about that.
I totally agree with this. In fact, what I think is interesting about both this, but even more so, this is who's above us, with the exception of Harvard. They're all technology, they're science and engineering. And I'd say I completely agree with you, and I'll be happy when I talk to you about the flyover of some connections we've made in the last 2 or 3 years in connecting parts of the university. But I'd say absolutely in engineering and in the School of Information and lots of parts in economics, in Lawrence Berkeley Labs, there is tons of IP, tons of incredible things in genomics that we are not connecting to this school nearly as much as we, like I'd say we're sort of, I mean, don't let the dean hear this. I know they're taping this, so. So winning the teaching award gives me some degrees of freedom. They won't fire me tomorrow. But I'd say we're sort of, you know, just out of the gate. So I think you're absolutely right. And interestingly enough, because I did guest teach at Stanford, interestingly enough, Stanford has the same problem. You know who does it the very, very best is MIT. It is awesome to go there because I've been a business judge a few times and done stuff there. That integration is just seamless. It is unbelievable. And so I think we have a lot to learn about about how to do that. So, so Richard, you're absolutely right. So why don't we're going to call Carmen right now. So why don't, I told her we call her too, and she's sitting by her computer. So why don't we do that? And then I'll give you a flyover of sort of what we're up to today before we talk to Jeremy. Okay, Carmen. So tell us about Make in LA.
Make in LA is a venture fund designed specifically for hardware technology. So hardware technology includes the Internet of Things, robotics, wearables, virtual reality, augmented reality, basically anything that needs to be manufactured. And we invest in companies primarily that go through our 4-month accelerator program.
And so how many classes? Are you on your third class?
We are recruiting currently for class number 4.
Okay, great. And tell us some examples about some of the things that you have gone through your program that you're most excited about.
Well, I can tell you what others are most excited about because I'm excited about all of them.
Okay.
All
of them are your favorite children?
We made first. Yes, they're all great people, great companies, solving very interesting problems. We made our first investment in August of 2015, and since then have invested in a total of 11 companies. 10 of those companies have gone through our accelerator program. So some of the more, I guess, frontier tech kind of companies that have gone through our program, one is a company called Emerge, and they are digitizing the sense of touch using ultrasound technology. So if you think about a virtual reality, augmented reality, or even mixed reality experience, and in many cases you can see, you can hear, but you can't touch. So they are working on addressing that sense and bringing that to market.
What I thought was really cool when I went down to the Make in LA lab when I saw Emerge was the notion that I might not live near my elderly mom. And we talked about this because somebody lived in Mexico, and you could actually not just talk to them. And it really brought me to tears that I could actually simulate the idea of touching my mom. That was amazing to me.
Yeah, and you know, one of the founders on the team, Mauricio, he's from Ecuador, and he did his graduate work. He did an MBA at Notre Dame, and stayed on to build the company here. But his wife and his young son were in Ecuador, so he was very passionate about about this project because he'd reach out to his son on the iPad, and but making that touch feel real is something that we hope will happen in the coming years.
Great. So tell us about one more.
So we have a, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about our mission is to make hardware less hard. So for many of the entrepreneurs that come through our program, they have never brought a product to market. So there's many challenges involved with manufacturing, from industrial design to design for manufacturing, knowing how to pick your contract manufacturer, your suppliers, understanding the different distribution channels and whatnot. And so that's our value add. Through the 4-month, we help companies really understand, one, who their customer is, and then 2, how to avoid a lot of the mistakes that that are possible in a producing a manufacturing device. So we've broken ground and are about to finish construction on our 35,000 square foot facility. Maura, when you came to visit, we were in kind of our Make in LA version 1.0. So we had taken existing space, bought gym mats, put them on the floor, bought directors' folding tables, put together a makeshift office space for our companies, and then brought in a maker space to operate our equipment. But in this next version 2.0, we've fully designed this 35,000 square foot space. It's 2 levels. On the top level, there'll be co-working. So we took inspiration from WeWork, for example, to build out a big co-working space so that we can support more hardware companies. And on the first level, we'll have our maker space. So maker space, for those that don't know, is like a tech shop. So we have $2 million worth of equipment, laser cutters, 3D printers, injection molding machines, things like that. We've also brought in a biotech lab so that we can support biotech companies and a third-party logistics partner as well. So we're really trying to create a community for hardware entrepreneurs to come and develop their companies.
Great. So let me ask you, you went to Haas. How did it help you in your entrepreneurial education, in your venture, in this new quest that you're on?
Yeah, so, before coming to Haas, I was nowhere near the venture space. My background is in finance. So I worked for over a decade in asset management for a big mutual fund company called Dimensional Fund Advisors. And I thought life was great until the company moved to Austin. And I really had to think about where I wanted to take my career. So I enrolled in the executive MBA program at Haas with the thought that I would go into social impact investing. And that's all I knew. But when I got to Haas, it was an incredible journey. In the first month or so, we went on a Silicon Valley trek. And that's when I really started to get immersed in the tech scene. We visited stealth companies. We visited Cloudera, which just had an IPO. We visited top profile venture capitalists. And so that's what initially kind of opened my mind to this new world of venture. So I started to direct my studies in that way, and was really fortunate to take classes from Maura, who led New Venture Finance. So it was a great combination for me because I really love the world of finance.
Great. Okay, let's see if there's 1 or 2 questions for Carmen before we let her go back. Yeah, and if you could tell us your name and what you're up to now.
Sure. New system. We didn't have that when I was here. Sean. My name is Sean Lundgreth. I was with Berkeley-Columbia 2007. I'm actually the CEO of a clean tech startup out there in Utah, Idaho. I actually am very interested in your space, but I just wanted to clarify. You said made in LA. Are you actually building manufacturing operations in LA, or you talked about contract manufacturers, I assume overseas?
No, actually, so we do have one company in our portfolio that is in the clean tech space. They're a solar company. So I'd love to hear more about what you do. but Make in LA is a play on the maker movement. Many don't know that LA has a deep history in manufacturing. LA employs over 500,000 people in manufacturing. There's 12,000 manufacturers in Los Angeles. My business partner actually owns a contract manufacturer with 14 locations in the U.S. To answer your question, it's not specific to LA. We think there's advantages to building a hardware company in LA, though.
Great. Anything else? All right. Well, we think what you're doing is awesome, and we're so excited that on a beautiful Saturday afternoon you'd hang out with us, Carmen. So please join me in thanking Carmen and wishing her the best. So Jeremy is one of the most extraordinary people I've met. He was an undergraduate here, and as I said, I told him a little bit about you before you came. Did his senior thesis on entrepreneurial ecosystem. I don't want to steal his thunder, so he'll tell you a little bit about that. He has some slides, and I think he has curated one of the most important additions to the Haas ecosystem. And so I will, while he's doing that, I'll tell you one piece of what I think is important on the ecosystem. He has focused on the pre-seed, really the very small amounts of money that will help students and faculty and entrepreneurs at the front end. At the other end, what was really in 2015 is the UC Regents allocated $250 million of their capital to actually invest in UC inspired or based startups. And so that's obviously, they're not doing the 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. It's more the larger rounds. But both of those are absolutely critical parts of the ecosystem, and I think will be an important part of making sure that we're eating our own dog food and saying, if we believe that we are creating some of the best science, some of the best engineering, some of the best ideas throughout this campus, then we ought to reap the rewards of it. So how's it come? Oh, you're going to put your own. That's fine.
Maura, can you say how they're looking to allocate that capital? I mean, are they having in-house investors, essentially doing in-house VC work, or are they allocating to?
You probably know that. I think they're giving it to fund managers, right?
Yeah. So there's a large.
He can do it for you.
There's a large fund started by Vivek Ranadive, the owner of the Kinks, and the founder of Kidco, which is doing most of the later stage investments. They invested in our fund, which is the first campus-focused fund focused on one of the UC schools. They have a vision that what we're doing in Berkeley can expand across the broader UC. And historically, UC Berkeley's, out of all the UC schools, been the best performing in terms of startups. And so many are looking to us to set the model. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So while this is getting set up, well, thanks, Maura, for having me. Really appreciate it. My name is Jeremy Fianc. I graduated from UC Berkeley from the undergraduate program in the end of 2014. And as a student here, I was looking to start a startup. I actually took a intro to entrepreneurship class at Haas and won an entrepreneurship competition judged by Haas entrepreneur alumni who had success. And that gave me the kind of courage to pursue an entrepreneurial endeavor on campus. As I was going around looking for community resources and support, this was back in 2010, at least at the student level, didn't exactly find the community that I was looking for. And so saw that as an opportunity to build and strengthen the community, build on the base that Berkeley had already had and its tremendous history. I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but many folks don't know historically Cal has been quietly crushing it in the startup world. We have iconic companies like Apple, Intel, and Tesla that were founded by Cal alums. This was mentioned in the last talk. Cloudera, which had an IPO a few days ago, that was actually started by Cal alumni. Coupa Software is another recent IPO that was Cal. Twilio is another recent tech IPO. Their COO was Cal. And so many companies that folks know and love in the marketplace are Berkeley startups. One of the things that we're trying to do is attach the Berkeley to those startups and get alumni like yourselves going out loud and proud and saying you're a Cal alum. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. Do you have a mini DV? HDMI to mini DV.
Yeah, that's the one I had. Oh, that's this one here.
Yeah.
This is the one I had.
Last year I announced the Haas Fund, which is the first fund fully focused on UC Berkeley. We invest in companies with at least one Cal founder, student, faculty, and alumni. And Maura mentioned the thesis that I did. As a student on campus, I launched 5 different student groups with my friends. By the time we graduated, those student groups had sparked 50 companies that had raised over $50 million in seed funding. And so we realized there was something pretty exciting here, but I decided to actually take it one step further and do the homework and built up what we believe is the biggest database of Berkeley startups from sources like PitchBook, which is the most cited source for startups in at least the Berkeley community, from university data, from talking to some of the different accelerators on campus, and saw that there was, over the last decade, 26 exits of 100 million or more, 12 IPOs, 11 active unicorns in the marketplace. And so it was clear there was an opportunity, and there was really no one there to write the first check. As an entrepreneur on campus, it was easy to find the seed funds, but finding that first kind of up to $250K, what you needed to prototype or to just be able to cover rent is tough to come by. And so,
Jeremy, I think we got it.
Yeah, we got it?
Yeah, just whatever you need to do. Mirror.
Okay.
There you go.
So I started talking about some of the content here. I'm going to fly through this presentation very quickly so we can get to some questions. So Berkeley is the #1 public university in the country. Everyone knows this. I already mentioned some of the Cal legends and rocket ships. These are all companies that have at least one Berkeley founder. Some of them actually came out of Haas, Indiegogo, Tube Mogul, Caviar, Kabam. Many folks probably saw Kevin and his wife's generous gift to Haas. Incredible, some of the fastest growing companies are Berkeley companies that the world is seeing, knowing, and loving. Many of you probably have tried Pokemon Go, and I mentioned Cloudera already. So why the chirps? This is my first call to action to everyone in the community, which is we need to come out loud and proud. The Cal Bear needs to get woken up and roaring. So I put a little Cal flag on there. Go Bears. So for the first time ever, Berkeley was announced to be #1 for undergrad venture-backed startups. So these are alumni who have started companies, for the first time passing Stanford. So PitchBook's data says there are 881 companies over the last 5 years that were venture-backs. And we still have less money than Stanford if you look at the far right column. So that's another aspect of the opportunity we saw. But we think being bootstrapped is also good for a company early stage and not having too much capital. My second call to action for folks here is, so Berkeley is historically has been #2 over the last decade for startups with venture funding coming from its alumni. Haas is a little bit straggling behind. And so this is an opportunity. We love to help support more Haas MBA startups and get that number all the way up to 2 and then 1 coming from Haas MBAs. And as you can see, there's the names of some of the companies here, like Revolution Foods, that are doing some really interesting, exciting, impactful things in the startup world. And so our mission is to enable the next world-changing startups. And I briefly mentioned the fund. The broader vision with what we've launched is called the House. It's a startup institute for Berkeley built to support Cal student, faculty, and alumni startups through any phase of their startup journey. And we have a number of initiatives to actually bring that to life. We have classes and events that are open up to the community. Some of them are focused just on students. We have a program called the Haas Founders Program, which is just focused on students to help them get from idea or prototype to startup. We have a program called the Haas Residency, which is focused on students, faculty, or alumni. We have many alumni that are participants in our program to date. Both of these programs are actually equity-free. We raised a couple million philanthropically to bring this to life. And then we have a venture fund, which invests in student, faculty, and alumni. So many of you probably remember the old Copy Central building on Bancroft between Telegraph and Bowditch. We turned that actually into a startup incubator / hacker space / maker space. You heard a little bit about some of the different types of spaces. Our space was actually designed by design and architecture students at Cal. And then we had some of the creators of GoPro and Uber and GitHub's offices actually polish it up a little bit for us. And then the House Fund, I already mentioned, we invest in Berkeley startups, pre-seed and seed stage. Our sweet spots to do pre-seed investments, and about a third of our portfolio is alumni that are 5 years removed or more. And another one of our big aims is to activate the 500,000 Berkeley alumni. We have a massive alumni base and community that we can all leverage. A weekend like this brings that to life in an incredible way. And so again, the bear will be roaring. So to make this actionable and helpful to all of you as alumni, you want to build the future, you want to start a company, where do you start up? How can you leverage the UC Berkeley and the Haas startup communities to launch? Well, just in this last week, there was an incredible number of events that happened for alumni, for the community. This was an event that was hosted by a few Haas alumni from Canvas Ventures and Javelin Venture Partners, and it had the CEO of Unity, who's a Haas alum. It had the CEO of Pokemon Go and Niantic, who's a Haas alum, Diane Green, who sold her company to Google and started VMware before that, and Orrin Hoffman, who sold his previous company called LiveRamp for over $300 million. These are all alumni of Cal, and this was an alumni event that was hosted earlier in the week. There was a big ideas competition, mostly focused on students that happened on campus. Many alumni came back to mentor. Some of them came back to speak as part of this. There's actually a Berkeley company that was able to turn orange peels into water bottles, which I thought was pretty cool. A few nights ago, the Haas MBAs put on the launch competition, which happens every year. This was a food delivery robot that presented. There's 18 startups that presented, and they got probably 100 or more applications to that. In the house, we had Shervin Pishavar, who runs Sherpa Ventures and is a founder of Hyperloop, and came back and spoke in our space. There's craziness that happened on campus, and you can follow that through one of our startups called Wildfire, and follow some of the protests and activity real time around you. Again, Cloudera had its IPO. We had a couple Cal football players just get drafted into the NFL, Davis Webb and Chad Hansen. So just in 1 week, it's incredible how much activity is happening on the Berkeley campus, and it's honestly a little bit overwhelming. It's very exciting, and there's so many ways to engage. It's not easy necessarily to navigate, but we'd love to help you, and the folks in the Berkeley-Haas Entrepreneurship Program would also love to help you navigate that. I'm going to share a couple short pieces of advice, and we're almost done here, that I share with students that might actually be helpful to everyone here, which is step outside your comfort zone. I mentioned all these events. Maybe you're considering starting a company, or maybe your company is in its early stages. Show up to some of these events, and that half the battle is being there. You might find your co-founders at one of these events. You might find an incredible partner or a CEO who's an alumni who could be a game changer for your business. And one of the reasons we launch a physical space in one of the most trafficked parts of campus is, just by putting yourself in the environment where folks that have common interests show up, interesting serendipity could happen. And the last thing is grab coffee with someone in this room, exchange business cards. It's something that students definitely don't do enough. It's something that maybe you haven't done enough in recent time, and just there's no substitute for the one-on-one interaction in our digital age. Again, I mentioned before, Berkeley's huge. This is basically just like there's many different places you can go on the campus, and don't even try to make sense of this graph that I put together. But in essence, at the end of each of these nodes is like a long list of opportunities and activities, those classes, clubs, labs, events, incubators, accelerators. There's actually 7 different accelerator programs in the Berkeley community. Many of them focus on different specific verticals. And so this is a little bit of how we visualize the ecosystem. This doesn't show everything. I highlighted some of the resources that exist through Haas, the Berkeley-Haas Entrepreneurship program launch, Skydeck, which is an accelerator. We have our residency program here. So there's just a lot going on, a lot of exciting resources out there and available. And I want to open it up to questions because I'm curious, just kind of a little bit more of folks in the audience, what their interests are. I put a quote up there. We had Steve Wozniak come and speak at our space, and we asked him to write an inspirational quote on our wall, and he wrote, "Life is life." We're still trying to contemplate the meaning of life. Yeah, so anyways, my main aim from this today was to get you all excited and to allow you to realize that there's just so much opportunity here, and there are really no excuses. You can get involved, you can come back and speak, mentor. If you want to start a company, we would love to help you through the Haas ecosystem. And I'll end it with that. Go Bears. Thank you.
This is why I think Jeremy's awesome. Let me ask you a question that Andrew asked earlier, and that is, what can we do to connect more of the campus, since there's such, if you go back to that slide where you have all the different parts, we don't do as good a job at leveraging all of the engineering, genomics, all the different IP that's around the campus on the entrepreneurial sense. What can we do to really accelerate that connection better?
Yeah. I think historically, and even just when I came to campus in 2010, entrepreneurship was pretty siloed to a specific department. What we saw happen, especially at the student level, is people are coming together based on common interests. And so the best companies that we've seen founded were multidisciplinary. They had someone who was business inclined. They had someone who was engineering inclined. Maybe they had someone with a deep scientific insight or industry insight, all come together. And I experienced that myself with a company I tried to launch on campus here. And so I think it's really just about knowledge and mind share. Where do I go if I'm interested in this? And so one of the things we try to do just at our physical space, you could be walking down Bancroft, you walk into our space, you're interested in genomics, and we can point you to 3 labs or point you to 2 clubs or point you to these companies that you could apply to an internship for. And so it's kind of information exchange. How do we better communicate? Because at a base level, all the opportunity is right there in front of us. And so I think event is a powerful mechanism that we try to encourage, and it's just a matter of getting the word out to the right people at the right time.
Great. Okay. How about other questions? If you could tell us who you are.
Oh, sure. I'm Wendy Huang. I'm class of 92, and I live in San Diego. So if I were wanting to incubate something, how would I access the residency program? I'd actually have to come up to Berkeley and stay a while? Is that what you're proposing, or?
Right now, yes, that is what we're proposing. The magic happens here. That said, I've been down. There's 100,000 alumni in the broader LA or SoCal area, I believe. And in New York, there's tons of alumni, and so one of the things that we've been trying to do is help spark these micro communities by doing things like hosting dinners, just so you know who the other entrepreneurs are down in San Diego, for example. And so, if that's something that you would love to help champion and you want to be based in San Diego, there's opportunities there. And, I think we would still love to be a resource to you, and I think Berkeley would, Haas would as well. And so it's just, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll put my email up here. So reach out, and we'd love to find ways to help.
I have a second question, which is, I think a lot of alumni would be interested in investment opportunities in some of the startups that come out of the house.
Yeah.
So is there a way to create a network for alumni investing?
Yeah, absolutely. There actually already is an angel investor network called the Berkeley Angel Network, started by some Haas alums, actually. And so that's, it's called Berkeley Angel Network. Happy to put folks in touch with there are organizers there. With the Haas Fund, the companies we've funded over 20 companies, mostly across software, no core sector focus. And so we've done investments across digital health, ed tech, advanced manufacturing, genomics. And so we have an AngelList profile where you can see some of the companies we've supported in our portfolio to date, and we'll be continuing to increase the information and
when
share.
do you think you might be raising a second house fund? Oh,
well, yeah, thank you for the plug. Yeah, if anyone is an investor personally, please shoot me an email. And the entrepreneur's advice is always be fundraising, I think. So
right, right, exactly. I mean, I don't teach new venture finance for nothing.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Okay, how about others?
Can you tell us who you are? Cheryl Haas, retired AT&T executive director.
Great.
Class of 1980.
Hey, Cheryl.
Hi. Do you offer mentoring once the business is established and they're running? Is there a mentoring program for those executives or the owners?
Absolutely, absolutely. So through our residency program, we run a formal program that provides similar resources to an accelerator where we'll do actually office hours and we'll pair companies up with mentors. For the companies that we fund through our venture fund, one of the first things we'll do is actually pair them up with someone who's built and sold a company in their space. We actually have a few part-time partners on our team. Brett Wilson, the founder and CEO of TubeMogul, Jason Wang, the founder and CEO of Caviar. They're both Haas alums and are on board to mentor our executives especially. And so bringing in, especially for our first-time founders, the domain and executive expertise is of the utmost importance.
Hi, I'm Richard Wilson, Executive MBA, class of 2015.
Hey, Richard.
Nice to meet you. I really liked your talk. It was really interesting. At the moment, I like, for want of a better word, playing in the entrepreneurial space through stuff I'm doing on the outsides of my day job. I'm in pharmaceutical healthcare business. And it strikes me that there's lots of little pods of activity around the Bay Area. And I've always been wondering, how do I do more to connect? Either, like at the moment, I'm playing a mentoring role through a nonprofit called California Life Sciences Association, where they leverage folks like me who work in the industry to come in and set up small groups of people to help startups get to the next level of funding. And I've kept thinking, how do I get this connected to Haas? Or what's that conduit going to look like? So I don't know if I really have a question. I'd say I'd love to connect and see if we can have that conversation.
Yeah. Would love to have a conversation with you outside of this. And I think more a common thing that we hear from aspiring entrepreneurs is, how do I manage this in parallel with my day job? And it's that there's not really a great answer to that besides that it's really kind of carving out that specific time. You make an appointment with yourself basically to work on this activity. And there's a lot of these programs that exist within Berkeley can fit that appointment slot. And so it might not be you working on your venture specifically, but it could be you putting yourself at some of these events or being an advisor or adding value to one of these programs just to be in the mix, just to give yourself an opportunity for that kind of spark moment where you might say, hey, I'm ready to pursue this full time.
Andrew Randall, I'm Berkeley-Columbia, 2007.
Hey,
and I was wondering about the Sky Deck.
And what do you do in your day job?
I'm CEO of a startup.
All right. Are you seeking funding?
Not right now, but we'll be raising a Series B later this year.
Congrats.
I was wondering about the Sky Deck, and you mentioned them in passing.
That was what existed when I was here. What's the relationship? What was the Sky Deck not doing that it needed to do? How do you see that working? In fact, if I'm a student, it would be a bit strange to know which do I go to.
It's a good question. Yeah, so I actually
Could you tell people what the Sky Deck is?
Yes.
I was going to get to that, but didn't before you came there. So.
Yeah, so the Sky Deck was one of the first startup accelerator programs in Berkeley. If you take it steps back in time, maybe when some folks were here, there was an incubator in the basement of the Bancroft Hotel where companies like Indiegogo and TubeMogul got their starts, and that was sparked by Haas as well. Actually, when I was here as a student, I was part of the Skydeck working on a digital health startup. I was also part of the Foundry, which was a new hardware and research-focused accelerator that came up on campus. And basically what we found in my thesis, actually, I did an analysis of this and looked at startups that had successfully raised funding coming out of the ecosystem, started by students, faculty, and we saw that every entrepreneur had a different story. And so, if you go back to this journey here, some founders said, hey, I just need this one resource or lab. Leave me alone. I'm going to get this done. And others, they'll leverage 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll do whatever it takes to be successful, and they maybe need a little bit more hand-holding, or it's just strategic, and they're leveraging all the resources they can get their hands on. And so, what we found is, how do you guide folks through every phase of that startup journey? And so through the house, through our programs, we actually have companies that are part of Skydeck or the Foundry or Y Combinator or 500 startups that are leveraging our platform. We'll basically point you to all the resources that exist within Berkeley and also be a bridge to the broader Silicon Valley of investors, mentors, customers, recruiting, stuff like that. And so, we see ourselves kind of as a platform for the broader community, kind of a Sherpa guiding you through each stage. And so, Skydeck's a great resource. The Foundry is a great resource. There's QB3, if you're in the life sciences arena, has bridges to UCSF. And so, it's there. You have a many to choose from.
But I think of the house fund, or the house playing a sort of earlier stage, a more pre-seed role, in addition to the sort of air traffic controller role than Skydeck does.
Yeah, I think we definitely want to be kind of an initial stop or guide, especially for MBAs and undergrad students through their journey, if you're at the idea or idea stage. On the investing side, we'll invest earlier than almost any investor. We actually like to be the first investors, and so that's kind of what makes us a little bit unique and different. And so we're actually happy to help guide entrepreneurs through the process of fundraising. We're pretty actively involved in making a ton of introductions and setting folks up, helping them run a process. And we've actually done that for companies up to Series B at this point too. And so even if you have a later stage startup or may even not be a startup at this point, Berkeley can still be a resource to you. We help companies that are Cloudera type stage recruit. Well, maybe not anymore, but fast growing large companies like Flexport's a Series B company now that we've supported and funded, and so Berkeley can be a resource at any stage of the cycle.
So I actually went up and down Sand Hill Road pitching for startup before. So I'm Sean Lundgrath with Berkeley-Columbia 2015,
hey,
classmates with Jeff. I'm also CEO of a startup.
Great.
I just want to make a comment that it's either I haven't been here a while and I've seen this, but it's always been my sense that Berkeley has that a lot of the ingredients, but there wasn't that Sand Hill Road component of just supporting the entrepreneurial community, just incubate and get companies going. This is great what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And outside of this, has there been any other kind of like VC clusters that are in this area?
So there's a good number actually of Haas MBA alumni that are partners at leading VC firms. Most folks would be surprised. We hosted an investor night for alumni for alumni of Cal, MBAs and the broader campus ecosystem, and we had 70 investors that were all Berkeley alumni just at one event, and that wasn't the whole list. And so I'm telling the investors to be loud and proud too, and help.
They're all down in that kind of South Bay.
Yeah, well, an exciting trend is all the top 10 VC firms now have offices in San Francisco. And so the center of Silicon Valley shifted to San Francisco, which is a huge benefit for us over in Berkeley and a big opportunity for the East Bay as well, where we're actually now closer. Berkeley is now closer for for a VC partner to come visit than going down to the campus that will not be named.
Hi, my name is Sheng Wong. I'm actually a founder of a startup. And I have a question regarding, so some of the investors and companies, a lot of them start companies. As an alumni too, I would love to know who these companies are and use their services, right?
Yeah,
or
that's great.
part of it is being loud and proud, but to do that, we kind of would love to know who these companies are, who these investors are, and vice versa, right? It's a communication thing.
Sure.
And so what are you guys doing to broadcast that, and vice versa? How can we, whether it be a community we can join or to see where all this is happening? Because you mentioned you have a lot of database on founders and alums companies. I would love to be part of that group, and vice versa, right?
Yeah. Because the Tree University, they do that. They take care of their own, they say, well, we got to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't done that
it.
much, or
Yeah.
I haven't seen it if there is, and I'd love to know where it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, at a base level, you're absolutely right. The information's not out there. I mean, for us, I've been waiting to publish the thesis that I put together and just making sure the data is statistically significant. But we're doing a rebuild of our website, which should have a digital guide for folks of just kind of where to go and some of the resources and companies that you can access to date. And so the short answer is it's not out there in a good way.
Yeah.
The positive answer is that now this is my full-time job, and there are folks that are fully focused and engaged on this from a broad Berkeley-wide angle. And so, we're looking to alumni like yourselves for feedback on what we can do to help you better. And it's when I'll sit down with an alum, I'll usually kind of put forth a menu of here are the ways you can get back involved and engaged. And oftentimes it may be hard for you to just even figure out. It may take you too much time, and you might get discouraged, of engaging. And so, stay tuned.
Okay.
Well, please join me in thanking Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So you can see why he's a great addition to the Haas ecosystem, and that's a great suggestion. And I love the loud and proud, because I do think that whether it's a VC venture partner or whether it's a VC or whether it's a Haas alum that was in the founding team of some of these famous companies, we're just not, we're the sort of best kept secret. So and the notion that if, given SEC regulations, if we can make it more available to alums who might want to make investments in Haas and UC Berkeley sponsored companies, and get that ecosystem going. I think that's exactly what I say about that work in progress to make that ecosystem even more robust than it is today. So let me just spend about 4 or 5 minutes telling you some other things about the Haas ecosystem, and then I'm happy to just take a break, ask a question. Jeremy will be here if you want to talk to him or talk to me or talk among yourselves. He says make sure you introduce yourself to at least one person you didn't know before you came in today. So this slide is a flyover because there's just a ton of stuff that's happening. There's courses in all programs. Really explosion in interest in the startups. I spend most of my time these days teaching the executive MBA program. I do a survey about do you think you're likely to start up a business in the next 5 years? And we're now about 70 people are reporting about 75% of them say that they expect to join or start a new startup in the next 5 years. So whether they will or not, who knows, but I think that's a remarkable number. So there's just a really groundswell of that. We see mentoring across all levels of education, either formally at the Lester Center or more informally or clubs, et cetera. They're just exploding all over. And it's really, really exciting to see. We have at Berkeley a historic thought leadership globally in entrepreneurship education. We train universities all over the world in how to teach entrepreneurship. We fundamentally believe that it is a tenet of freedom and opportunity globally. And so we teach that around the world, and we're enormously proud of that. And we're well known for it globally as having been probably the world's leader in teaching other universities to be able to do that. We also are a global leader in global social ventures. I think, and Kirsten, is it 20 years that we've been running this program? Anyways, it's a long time that we've been running the premier global social venture competition. The last I knew, we had the competition from 55 countries around the country. They go in regional competitions. Last week, they come up and they had their finals here. And it's really amazing to see the inventions and that whole process. And again, that sort of seeding entrepreneurship globally. And as one who has watched that, participated as a judge or a keynote speaker or just going to it, the level of quality over the last 10 years is just breathtaking in terms of it. We also have social venture incubators and launch programs and all sorts of things around social ventures. We also are, albeit a work in progress, beginning to connect different schools at Berkeley. Last year we announced a 2-degree program with the undergraduates, so now you can get you can graduate in 4 years with a degree in engineering and a degree in business. So it's a management, entrepreneurship, and technology degree that you can get. And we think that's a really important addition. And we talked about SkyDeck. What's really important about SkyDeck is it's actually jointly funded and jointly managed between the College of Engineering and the business school. And that was really the first major foray into these two schools formally doing something and saying, we have some assets that each other don't have. And then we talked about both investing. The last thing I'd say is that when I got my MBA about 13 years ago at Haas, Steve Blank was curating this idea of customer discovery, and he went on to really create the idea of Lean Launchpad and really began to what is now probably the most famous way to start entrepreneurship companies. And he incubated in this room, and now is doing it all over the world, the government, and we're so proud of that. He teaches here and at Stanford and with NIH to unlock all those discoveries so that we can take that medicine out of the research labs and onto cures much quicker. So I hope that we've given you a flyover and a sipping from the fire hose, but also some real life examples with Jeremy and Carmen of some of the things that we're so proud of here at Haas, and I think you should be proud of as well. So with that, I will say thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being an awesome Haas alum, and we'll break here, and if you want to ask me any questions or talk, come on up, and Jeremy's here, and introduce yourself to somebody you didn't know before you walked in the door. Thank you.